there was no debate on the floor of the House, and the Patriot Act was enacted. There was a debate on the floor of the Senate. Only one senator conceded that he read it, Paul Wellstone, who's now dead, and he's one of the two who voted against it. A half dozen courageous members of the House of Representatives, like Ron Paul, said, "How the heck can you expect me to vote on something that you won't let me read?" The Patriot Act lets federal agents write their own search warrants. We have come 360 degrees from fighting a revolution against a tyrannical government because it dispatched its agents to write their own search warrants, to establishing a constitution which assured us that that would never happen and required that when the government wants anything from you, it has to go to a judge, to popularly electing members of Congress who would vote to gut the Constitution and remove the second most important right in it and let federal agents write their own search warrants. And that's what this monstrosity of the so-called Patriot Act does. When I was giving a speech similar to this in another state in the Midwest, there were a lot of members of Congress there, about a half a dozen of whom came up to me afterwards and said, "We voted for the Patriot Act. We didn't know that it allowed agents to write their own search warrants. We never heard that before." Now, you then ask them a question. Lawyers like to ask questions that they already know the answer to. Question, did you read it? No, we didn't. Question, did you read anything before you voted on it? Answer, yes. Question, what did you read? We read a summary of it. Question, prepared by whom? By the Justice Department. Well, of course the Justice Department is not going to tell you the powers that you're giving to it to make it the decider and it the person and entity that can violate privacy. So these sad, sorry people who took an oath to uphold the Constitution in their blindness and in their fear enacted legislation that would subvert the Constitution. And some of them said, well, you know, we did this because we trusted George W. Bush. Trusted him with what? We are a government of laws and not of men. We have a Constitution that divides power, that keeps the states sovereign, that requires checks and balances. We don't give this kind of power to any single human being. It was the states who created the federal government and not the other way around. And power given to the federal government can be taken back. I believe in all my heart that the individual is greater than the government, that every individual is greater than any government, because we have immortal souls that can glorify God forever. The government is an artificial creation based on fear and force. You don't have to take my word for that, because the first president of the United States said the government is based on force. And the second president of the United States said the government is based on fear. That's why governments like to fight wars, because war is the health of the state. And when the government fights a war, it can take more of our money and take more of our freedom, and we will give it to them because we think it is keeping us safe. Liberty lost never comes back. So we have a government that claims that it will uphold the Constitution of the United States, that nevertheless, without even allowing members of Congress to read the documents that assault our basic liberties, violates that very oath. One time I was having a debate on air with one of my more irritable, irascible colleagues with an ego the size of the state of Pennsylvania. It might not even be big enough for him. I won't mention any names. And we were debating whether or not President Bush or any president could declare a human being an enemy combatant and lock them up and throw away the key and strip them of all of their rights. And I made the argument that you've heard me make now, which is that our rights are natural, and our rights can't be taken away by an act of the Congress or a command of the president, but only after a jury trial, after we've been convicted of violating somebody else's rights. And I said to this irritable colleague of mine, you only like this law, you only support the right of the president to do this because you trust him. What will you do, this was before the Democratic primaries, what will you do if Hillary becomes president and she declares you to be an enemy combatant? And he said to me, well, Judge, if Hillary becomes president and declares me an enemy combatant and ships me to Gitmo, would you come and visit me? And I looked at him and I said, Bill? No. Because she'll probably want to keep me there too. There's a member of the president's cabinet. She's the secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. I frequently forget her last name. Janet, what's her name? Absolutely, positively no relation whatsoever. Issues a report saying that people that believe in Second Amendment rights and people who have been veterans returning from the wars, whether just or unjust, and people who question the power of the government, and people who believe in the right to life are dangerous extremists. And I said to my friends that I work with who are just as upset over this report as you are, well, she knows that I'm right to life, and she knows that I believe that the right to carry a gun is a natural right, and she knows that I question the power of the government. She knows that because she hears me say it on the air every day. But how does she know it about the average American? Because she inherited the powers that the Republican Congress gave to a Republican president. Because her agents can write their own search warrants and go to your doctor, your lawyer, your telephone company, your computer server, even the post office, and read your mail and look at your records without having to get a warrant from a judge. Because her agents can capture the keystrokes that you touch on your computer without having to go to a federal judge to get that power. Because your buddy George W. Bush and the Republicans gave the president that power, and now it's in the hands of somebody that they don't trust. Don't they even know basic history? Give that kind of power to any human being who you like, and it will be passed to someone who doesn't like you. That's why we have a Constitution. So that kind of power cannot be in the hands of one person. That's why we have checks and balances. That's why the states can nullify a law of the Congress that interferes with their sovereignty.